Okay, is that working? Alright, cool. I don't know if you can hear this. Okay. The thing about this is I'm using the YouTube recorder thing, which is pretty convenient, except that it keeps crashing and then I lose everything that I've recorded so far. So, trying this again. And of course I've forgotten everything that I said in the last 6 or 7 takes. But in my rambling during my last one, oh yeah, I remember 2 things I said. One is that this is not the show. I was telling someone about it. I was setting up a green screen and I was going to do like a show. I'm still going to do that, but this is not the show. So this is, you could think of it as something similar because it's just me filming myself, which is what the show is going to be. But this is not it. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I was also going to talk about, or also have talked about several times, and probably will again if this doesn't get uploaded, which I don't have any reason to believe it will. I was talking about this thing called remuneration, which is, you know, payment, basically what you get paid. And the idea is that, you know, in our current system, capitalism, you know, and people, you know, mince words about that, or they'll split hairs and say, well, what we have is not capitalism, we have some other thing that calls itself capitalism, but real capitalism is better because this and that. But of course when you say that, whatever your idea of real capitalism is, has never existed, and no one, you know, it's never happened, and there's nothing you can point at and say this was real capitalism. It's all, you know, if we did it this way or that way. Okay, but you know, may as well call it what actually exists and call that capitalism, and then call it your pure version something else, because it's, you know, what we have, we call it capitalism, and let's keep it at that for the sake of argument. So you got capitalism, and under capitalism, the idea is under our system that you're remunerated based on your output, right? Based on you know, what you produce for society, or how society values whatever you produce. That's, you know, in theory. So if I do something that's more useful, then I get paid more, kind of thing. Of course it never works that way, and you don't only have to look around. You know, if the CEOs or the executives in any company get paid more than the people who are actually doing the work and producing things or selling the things that are produced or whatever. But beyond that, so that's one criticism of our current system, is that it doesn't work right. It's not, people are not remunerated based on output. But of course the other criticism is that even if that were the case, that wouldn't be a just way to do things, because there's genetic differences, things that just happen because, you know, whatever job it is, if you're hauling stones or whatever, then someone is going to have more genetic ability to do that, do it for longer, whatever. There's going to be a disparity in payment and in wealth. And when you get disparity in wealth, then you get more people have more, you know, what is wealth? It's access to resources, right? You get more stuff. And as soon as that happens, some people get more, and then people are getting less, and then that's going to continue, and then get class divisions again like we have now. So trying to do that, even if you were able to have a perfect system where people are actually remunerated based on their output, then that would still be a bad system, and even probably worse than what we have now, because this is an idea that I ran into recently that I kind of think is pretty insightful, is the idea that actually what we have, you know, the capitalism that we have now, it's unjust and unfair, but that's actually part of the reason. That's one of the things that sustains it. The very fact that it's unfair is what keeps people from just tearing it down, is why it's lasted so long. It's a factor in its favor, because if you did have a system where automatically people who were just better went to the top, and people who were not as good at things went to the bottom, as opposed to what we have in reality, where if I live in the ghetto, or if I have no money, I can barely afford to live and feed myself, and I see someone go by in a fancy car, they've got, you know, a nice house, they're a CEO of a company or whatever, then what do I say? I say, well, that person, you know, he's had a better streak of luck, or he was born into money, he got some inheritance, or his daddy was the CEO and he got an executive job from the start. You know, he got to go to the, you know, elite schools, and and you know, and then meanwhile me, I was born in, you know, in the projects or whatever, and I got no money, you know, got no opportunities, and this is where I am. It's not fair. But that's kind of acceptable still. If it, on the other hand, it were the case that if I'm in the ghetto and you know, and I see someone go by in a better car, he's got a nice house, you know, he's got all the good stuff, and I've got nothing, and then I say, well, it's because he's better than me at everything, and then that would be completely untenable. The resentment would build up from the lower classes against the higher classes, and of course there would be the opposite. The higher classes would legitimately look down on the lower classes because, oh, we're working harder, we're producing more, that's why we're higher. That would be horrible, and it would never last, because there would be outright immediately, not like now we have class conflict, class struggles, but it's kind of subliminated. It's kind of, you know, people, even when you're fighting against it, if you're organizing labor unions or whatever, and you're saying the workers fight against, you know, the people who own the means of production or whatever, okay, that's a struggle against it, but it still accepts the kind of the basic tenets, the basic underlying structure that they're struggling within. But it wouldn't be like that if instead of struggling against a boss who's treating me unfairly, I was struggling against a boss who was treating me unfairly, and he had every right to do so. Then it would be completely, you know, it would be torn apart. So far from this injustice in in our system of capitalism, far from that being something that's going to be its downfall, that's something that's actually sustained it. And incidentally, why does this question come up? It's because although that's not going to be the downfall of our system, quite the opposite. Of course, our system of capitalism as it is not going to last. That's a given. This culture we have where, you know, buy and consume and buy and consume and buy and consume, and then you live happily ever after. It doesn't happen. What happens is, you know, there's an end point, and it's going to end one way or the other. The question is, do we end it in this way, by thinking about these problems and trying to figure out a new system or how to fix it, or do we end it by pushing it to its limit and then collapsing and then having all hell break loose? Obviously, the path that we're on, the easy path, is to keep going until it crashes and then deal with it. But of course, that could easily mean the destruction of a large portion of the human race, especially because, you know, the military is all owned by, are controlled by corporate financial interests. Business interests are the ones that are producing the bombs and the weapons, and now the weapons are so strong, are so powerful, that the level of destruction is obviously, it's not something that's acceptable by any means. So that's one way if the system collapses, you know, it could collapse literally with a bang like that, and that's not something we want. Even if it doesn't come to that, even if there's not a nuclear exchange or something on that level, obviously it's going to end either, you know, environmental, you know, we're not going to have oil forever, that kind of thing. You know, there's global warming or climate change, or whatever you want to call it, that's going to step in and cause all kind of disruption. One way or the other, it's not going to last forever, and we need to think of something new. But in doing that, I just thought it's an interesting insight that you can't really rely on the fact that, well, it's an unfair system. Yeah, it is, but that's actually, it ends up in a weird way being something in its favor. And it's worth thinking of that, because a lot of times I think when you do try to think of a better system and come up with solutions, what you end up doing is trying to find ways to make the system do a better job of remunerating people properly based on on their output. And as it turns out, that would actually make it much worse. And first of all, no one would want that. No one's going to get behind doing that, because it'll become immediately obvious that that's going to be worse for almost everyone than what they have now. And even if that were to be started off, it would never last, because it would make life hell for the people